We're living in a strange age, one where truth is no longer the standard for winning an argument. In politics, people lie openly and still climb to the top of power. On social media, the one who argues louder, mocks sharper, and makes the better meme becomes right. Reason today isn't used to find truth. It's used to decorate emotion, bias, and manipulation. But what chills me is this. This entire chaos was predicted back in 1830 in a manuscript by Arthur Schopenhauer titled The Art of Being Right. He wasn't teaching morality. He was exposing the tactics humans use to win arguments at any cost, even when they know they're wrong. Schopenhauer observed that we often argue to win, not because we're sure we're right, but because we need to be. And that's why people value victory more than truth. This video isn't here to make you cunning. It's here to help you see the chessboard before you're cornered into losing, thinking you were just arguing well. Because if you don't understand the rules of the game, even if you're right, you'll still lose. Watch until the end, at the very least, so you won't be played without knowing it. Now let's begin with the first tactic, the most dangerous one, and so common that you'll realize you've probably fallen for it yourself without even noticing. If you want to win an argument, Schopenhauer said, don't waste your time trying to persuade with reason. Just find a way to stand with the winning side. You don't need to be right, you just need to be on the right side. Because most people don't listen to understand. They listen to confirm what they already believe. And when you say something that fits their bias, you don't need logic, just a well-timed nod and the words they want to hear. Schopenhauer observed that in most debates, the goal isn't to discover truth. It's to make your position look like the truth. People rarely care what's real. They care what helps them win. No one likes the truth when it makes them feel stupid or forces them to change their stance. No one likes the truth when it makes them feel foolish or forces them to change. So if you stand before a crowd and say something that matches their taste, even if it's wrong, you'll still win. This trick is dirty, but it's so effective you can see it everywhere. From television to TikTok to national parliaments. You don't need to be right, you just need to pull the crowd to your side and let them do the rest. And when prejudice alone isn't enough to finish off your opponent, you move to the next weapon, speed. Specifically, bombard them with questions. This isn't a conversation meant to understand one another. It's a tactic to suffocate your opponent's thinking. You throw out a barrage of questions so they don't have time to think. Every question carries an accusation, a sneer, a hidden blow. Are you denying the whole of history now? Wait, you said something different earlier. Forgot already? So what's your definition of justice then? Schopenhauer calls this a way to divert the opponent from the point by raising irrelevant objections. In other words, knock your opponent off the center of the debate with a stream of disruptive questions. The answer doesn't matter. You're not looking for answers. You only need your opponent to fumble, lose their footing, and grow increasingly uncertain. That's when the audience turns to you, the one in control, the one asking the clever questions. And they won't remember who was right. They'll remember who controlled the game. If the question barrage doesn't topple them, switch tactics. Don't attack the argument, attack the motive. This is one of the dirtiest tricks and one of the most effective, because instead of rebutting the idea, you only need to plant doubt about the person who voiced it. Schopenhauer calls this argumentum ad hominem. Instead of refuting the opponent's argument, direct your attack against his person. Sound familiar? You're saying that because it benefits you, right? With a single line like that, everything they just said is suddenly viewed through a lens of suspicion. A good idea becomes a scheme. A tight argument becomes cunning. You don't have to refute anything. You only need the audience to think, they're saying this to gain something. And in a world where everyone is tired of being deceived, suspicion beats reason. You don't need to prove you're right. You just need others to look like they're hiding something. That's how you win. The truth? It's lying dead somewhere backstage. And when attacking the person still doesn't throw your opponent off, you pull out the oldest trick in the book, distraction. Schopenhauer's point is simple. Make your opponent angry because once he's angry, he can't judge properly. But you don't always have to rile someone up. Sometimes you just need to change the subject. This move is so basic it almost becomes instinct. When you're up against the wall, when all your arguments are wobbling, instead of conceding, you flip it back with one line. Why is nobody talking about the other side's faults? Suddenly it's not about whether you're right or wrong anymore. It's both sides are at fault. A neat redistribution of blame, a fast equal split of guilt, and the debate resets. The beauty of this trick is that it hits exactly where the audience is tired. People hate complexity. People like the both sides are bad shortcut. In Schopenhauer's terms, if you can't refute the argument, distract the audience. This is a paraphrase of his tactic. Don't present it as a verbatim quote. You don't have to win by logic, you just need to escape defeat with a clever sidestep. Then, after you've distracted them long enough for the original question to fade, you pretend to come back, smiling harmlessly, dropping an innocent question that warps the whole original idea. Next move, pretend to agree, or pretend to be confused. Schopenhauer names this tactic putting words into your opponent's mouth. In other words, exaggerate his statements, twist them, or draw extreme conclusions. You don't attack directly, you simply repeat your opponent's point, but in a way that makes it sound stupid or dangerous. Oh, so what you mean is we should just abolish all morals? Boom. Suddenly the whole careful, reasonable argument that came before evaporates. The other person is forced to explain themselves from square one, to defend, to prove they are not some kind of monster. Meanwhile, you stand back looking calm and rational. No assault needed, only performance. As Schopenhauer put it in Spirit, misrepresent your opponent's argument subtly, and he will waste his time denying it instead of convincing anyone. In this game, whoever is forced to explain themselves first loses. When you pretend not to get it and make them justify, you hijack the emotional current of the room. But if that still doesn't topple them in front of the crowd, move to the next step. Label them. The argument sounds exactly like communism. Or, this is the same sophistry those fascists use. One short line, enough to warp the entire debate into a historical prejudice. Schopenhauer calls this the tactic of appeal to prejudice, exploiting pre-existing biases to win the crowd's emotions instead of their reason. He cautions that if an opponent uses a merely superficial or one-sided argument, you should seize on it and exaggerate it until it becomes absurd. You don't need to rebut the reasoning, just link it to a hated group. No matter how sound the argument, if it smells suspicious, it's dead. Because most listeners don't think with their heads, they think with collective memory. That's the primitive political instinct. Survive by identifying us and them. Once you slap a flashy label on your opponent, you've taken the upper hand. But if you're the kind of person who prefers to trap slowly, without obvious force, and watch the opponent fall by their own weight, this next move is for you. Hide your conclusion until the baited premises have trapped them. Schopenhauer's idea can be put like this. Get him to admit, step by step, the premises that will lead to your conclusion. Sounds harmless. In practice, you're building a trap. You start with a string of harmless-sounding questions. Do you agree that everyone should be treated fairly? And if someone breaks the law, shouldn't they be punished? So what if that person is a politician? Then, boom. So you're saying we should jail the entire ruling class? The final slam comes only after your opponent has nodded through the chain of premises without realizing they were being led. Schopenhauer warns, conceal your conclusion until the premises are established, then surprise him with it. The more unexpected the conclusion, the more damage it does. You don't have to force them to say something false, you just need to make them say it themselves. When you've led them to agree, step by step, and then hit them with the devastating "so you're saying," you control the game. But if they still don't fall, still keep calm and keep arguing, then it's time for the final knockout of this takedown phase. Make him angry. Schopenhauer didn't shy away from this. He observed, if your opponent becomes angry, you've already won. Just make them lose control and you steal the audience. Because in arguments, reason is what the crowd admires, but emotion is what they believe. The person who yells, turns red, or slams the table is the one who's lost the upper hand, even if they're 100% right. Nudge them, pick at the sore spot, Repeat what they just said in a mocking tone. No need for logic, just make them snap. Then the audience will see you as calm and rational. They'll see the other person as uncontrolled anger. As Schopenhauer put it in Spirit, your opponent abandons logic and the audience sees it. When they've lost their temper, the smartest move is to stay utterly calm, then turn their rage into a joke. And that's when you use the next move. A soft but deadly blow. Exaggerate their point until they become a caricature. Schopenhauer names this tactic, exaggerate your opponent's statements to make them appear ridiculous. The method is simple. They say 1, you crank it to 10. They say, we need tighter market regulation. You snort and reply, oh, so you want the government controlling even my fridge? You're not rebutting the idea. You're warping it into something laughable, making the audience laugh while your opponent retreats to explain themselves instead of arguing. In Schopenhauer's Spirit, making your opponent's position seem absurd can be more effective than directly refuting it. Because the audience doesn't remember the correct argument, they remember who looked foolish on stage. And in this game, a single burst of laughter can outweigh 100 logical points. Once you've stretched the opponent's claim into ridicule, the crowd leans your way. But if the fight still isn't over, if the other side remains calm, reasoned, and stubborn, it's time for the last card, a move that needs no logic, only instinct. Attack the person. Schopenhauer called this tactic argumentum ad personam, one of the lowest yet most devastating weapons in any debate. When logic fails, you don't attack the argument, you attack the person. You aim for their character, not their reasoning. I can already tell what kind of person you are, or you talk like someone who's never had to live like the rest of us. When you have no argument left, there's always insult. It's cheap, but brutally effective. In a post-truth world, most people can't tell the difference between reason and ridicule. They don't follow logic, they follow emotion, and emotion is infinitely easier to manipulate. You won't find these tactics in a philosophy textbook, but you'll see them everywhere, in talk shows, political debates, podcasts, Reddit threads, YouTube comments, and sometimes, if you're honest, in yourself. As Schopenhauer warned, in essence, truth lives deep down, but vanity floats on the surface, and most of humanity prefers to stay on the surface. Schopenhauer didn't write The Art of Being Right to teach people how to be deceitful. He wasn't glorifying manipulation. He was issuing a cold warning. This is the game. If you choose to play, you'd better know the rules. In the opening of his book, he states plainly, in Spirit, we must set aside objective truth and focus only on the art of gaining the upper hand in a dispute. In other words, argument has nothing to do with truth. It's a duel of words, and whoever is quicker, tougher, and more cunning wins. Because, as Schopenhauer saw it, human nature doesn't love truth. It loves victory. And that's why, in most debates, truth is the first casualty. But he wasn't asking you to become corrupt. He was pointing to a painful reality. If you are right but don't know how to argue right, you will lose. And when you lose, it's not just you who pays the price. The truth does too. So learning to argue isn't about deceiving. It's about defending what's true from those who twist it better than you can protect it. Maybe you've lost an argument you should have won, not because you were wrong, but because you didn't know how to fight. So the final question is this: do you choose to be right and silent, or to learn how to fight right, so truth doesn't die unheard? If you've ever been misquoted, attacked, or outmaneuvered, share this video with those who've been played the same way. Because truth, if left undefended, will always be the first to fall.